Yeah. So I got to
What's up, dudes?
What up, man? I'll be honest with you. When I was trying to find some resources on things to read about what led to the creation of what is now called Effective Fitness Combatives. At first it was called some like EFTCP.
There's Effective Fitness Training
Combatives program.
It was too long.
It was way too long.
We simplified it.
We're not smart enough to remember.
I think we were just trying to separate the two initial Instagram pages from the already established business of effective fitness training, which already had a following. So using the effective fitness name and then adding in, whether it was combatives or whatever it was initially. And then as it grew and became more of a serious thing, because it was in the talks for quite a bit.
It was a minute, yeah. So I found Jay. I've been following Jay for quite some time, and then this dude's fucking good. So had a phone call with Jay and was like, "Hey, dude, let's change the standard in policing. I had this idea, and you are the man. The man." And so yeah.
Yeah, and I'd been building curriculums for combatives and defensive tactics programs since about 2009, 2010, where I really started to take a deep dive into how martial arts has changed over the decades, especially since 1993 when UFC came around and Jiu-Jitsu blew up on the scene. And then now what we have is mixed martial arts, right? So mixed martial arts is this thing. Sure, people have their love and passion for Jiu-Jitsu, people have their love and passion for wrestling, and then people have their love and passion for striking. But your true mixed martial artists are good and well-rounded in all three now.
Yeah. Yeah, and they have to be.
And just like a lot of things in police work, the wheels of justice move slowly. So it would be great if we could just implement overnight and make everyone understand that this is why it's the new standard. Unfortunately, the profession doesn't work that way.
No.
But it does change, and change is coming, and we see it. But, law enforcement before us, before me, I didn't come on till 2000. So before us, there was really no real good martial arts as far as Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu wasn't known in the US really till 93. The one thing that always blows my mind is wrestling, right? Wrestling's been around
thousands
forever.
of years. Yeah, thousands of years.
Why aren't we adding in wrestling takedowns and control into police work instead of using Aikido and even Judo has some really good takedowns and stuff with clothing on.
Oh yeah.
Right? Why when defensive tactics came about in police work, why was it off of the wrist lock and the Japanese Jiu-Jitsu and karate and Taekwondo? I guess that's because that's what was popular in America at the time. And we just know that over time that's just realistically a lot of it's been useless as far as what we do in our profession. I'm not saying that those martial arts are useless at all. So I'm not saying that, because they all have their places. But in law enforcement, we know that the arts of controlling somebody are really important, because custody is our main objective. If we got to take them into custody, and at some point that means putting hands on them.
Yeah, this is not a stab at karate, but I think Americans adopted it because you get your black belt at 7 years old. People like to say a lot about black belt.
It's definitely easier for people to get it. Yep.
So
Jiu-Jitsu, you can't even get an adult blue belt, an adult color belt until you're 16.
Right. So again, you have that process there, and then you also have what is known as PPCT, obviously pressure point control tactics, and that kind of took law enforcement by wave. I call it one of the biggest scams in law enforcement.
Yeah, it set law enforcement way back because everyone just adopted the PPCT
curriculum,
and then they weren't looking to find anything else. So it just set everything back so far.
Right. Because that's what I originally was trained in the police academy was PPCT. And two, and the reason why they used it was, one, they had data on it. That just goes to show you that you can utilize data to basically say whatever you want. And they showed how much it reduced liability, but they didn't they didn't dare show how effective it was during an actual encounter.
Correct. Yeah.
Because once applied under pressure, it basically just crumbles.
Yeah,
So,
we know nowadays there's multiple different studies and stuff out there,
Sure.
but like pain compliance overall is usually somewhere right around 1/3 of the time effective in police work. You have adrenaline,
Right.
which is one of the biggest painkillers that's natural. It's just adrenaline. Okay. You also have your opiates out there. You have your methamphetamines. You have your alcohol. All those things are going to play a factor into reducing what effect pain has on the human body.
Sure.
Right. So when pain compliance fails, and we can't strike them, or we can't use pressure points, or the joint locks aren't being efficient, then what are we doing, right? What do we do at that point besides rely on a tool? And unfortunately, I think in the U.S. we're too tool compliant, or we're complacent. We're complacency
And
as far as
yeah.
dependent on just utilizing tools.
Yeah, and again, it's a lot easier for an agency to throw money at a tool and say, look, we fixed the problem, whatever the problem was. Maybe it was an incident that occurred. Like, oh, we're going to take this tool, we're going to throw it at this problem, hoping that the public will see, oh, look, well, they got a new tool, it should fix this problem, when really all these they don't move. They're just hunks of metal and plastic that won't do anything unless the person operating those tools knows what they're doing, right? And so,
and most of those people probably don't have the proper training hours on them continuously. Right. During the academy, let's say during the academy, the average is probably about 80 hours of handgun training. DT training is probably varies somewhere between 40 hours and 120, depending on what academy you're at. I would say the average is probably closer to 80 hours there as well. The problem is once you get that initial 80-hour training and then you break out and go to your department, the in-service training is where it's failing the profession. The in-service training is where it's failing the profession, because they're not doing it continuously. So they're maybe training it once a year, maybe, and some don't even have it. Some of them haven't trained it for 15 years,
and that's frustrating. So one thing that we decided to do as a company was to take all the knowledge we have, and again, it's Jay and I are just two pieces of this massive puzzle that we call EFC. We have a multitude of instructors. These guys are loads of experience, all different units, different applications, and bring that all together to then solve the problems that we're seeing, the in-service issues, the available resources issues, the actual curriculum and how to integrate it with people who have no grappling or jiu-jitsu or wrestling experience, and making them into an effective police officer within a timely fashion.
Right. So my first real big curriculum build was for the department, and then my second real big curriculum build was for the state of New York,
right, for
DCJS. And I built like a pretty decent cadre for that, as far as most people had jiu-jitsu, or they all had some sort of colored belts in jiu-jitsu or pretty high-level wrestling to be the instructors for the state group.
Right.
And that grew, and we really started like tweaking things and finding out what we wanted to do, because everyone that was on there also had some sort of TAC experience or working for agencies where they were pretty busy, and we were getting into like a lot of the fights on the ground, and then coming back and tweaking what we were teaching in the curriculum. So everything that we talk about is pressure tested at the highest level, which is in the environment. And then we started talking about how can we bring this nationwide, right? And
worldwide, really.
What is one of the biggest problems? Okay, so we found out, through our martial art, that Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu exploded once BJJ Fanatics became a thing.
Right.
BJJ Fanatics is this library of amazing instructors putting out instructionals so people can watch them virtually on their phone and their computer when they can't get to the gym. And we just saw jiu-jitsu start to explode at that point, right? So we know if in-service is lacking, then we wanted to build that app where they had a video library, they had access to all the course material and all the resources to help them start training continuously on their own. People that don't come to the instructor courses can do the online user course. They can get those things. So there's now virtual data available to them to train on their own.
Right. And so now if you take the instructor course, a level 1 instructor course, you also leave with the information for continuous education. And you get access to the private Facebook group where we discuss certain techniques or incidences and, again, how we can improve on that. So, again, the company's always evolving. The curriculum's always evolving. We're always expanding our instructor cadre. We have I would say probably some of the toughest, smartest law enforcement and jiu-jitsu practitioners probably in the country, hands down.
Yeah, you said it best earlier. Like, you and I are just a part of the puzzle, right?
Correct.
It's a team. You have to build this team. And when I wanted to build this cadre, I wanted to build it to be the best cadre in the world, not just in the country, right? So we have a standard for that, and our standard is you have to be
super
a brown or black belt in police, or brown or black belt in jiu-jitsu, or a collegiate level wrestling with some sort of background in grappling, okay? And then you have to have law enforcement experience. By putting those together, you take the tip of the spear of your profession as far as the experience, and then adding in your ability to be a brown or black belt, and then a high-level collegiate wrestler. So 2 of the sports that we talk about, when you go out and you spar or you go out and you compete, 100% resistance from your opponent. That's what you're getting in the street, right? And there's no breaks until there's a submission, in those sports. So they're used to grinding and working and being made uncomfortable. And it just makes them better. It makes them used to being uncomfortable. It allows them to be able to control people, which is our end-all goal in custody.
Right. Yeah, I mean, Jay said it best, right? The goal is to produce a curriculum, a pathway for agencies to take. And basically the goal is we don't expect them to learn to figure out by themselves. We are there to help guide an agency into what we know to be an effective outcome, right? Which is we're getting these resources to cops. They're able to train it regardless of skill level, right? Yes, we have high-level instructors, but that's done, by design.
Right.
But we're taking these high-level instructors who also have experience in the grappling world, teaching, let's just say, a starting white belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and building them up into a competent grappler. It's the same concepts and principles there, right? The whole walk, crawl, walk, run method, right? And that's also something we do as well as it pertains to the curriculum. So kind of going back to the question of this is kind of why it started, is we saw a problem and we're solving that problem with what we think is the best solution for law enforcement based off of experience, data, real world application, and then the results that we're now getting from our courses. There's countless body cam footage, countless data we're getting right now from multiple agencies that have gone full EFC, and we're seeing it really starting to spread throughout the country relatively quickly.
Yeah, we're actually being recognized for our brand name now, where a lot of people didn't know us. And I still think, I bet you out of all the police agencies across America, we're not even 2 years in yet.
No.
So, which is kind of amazing to think about how large and fast we've grown in just that short time.
Yeah.
And it just stands for the standard that we're putting out there.
Well, there's just a void, right? There was a void, right? There was one company out there that was doing a law enforcement, I don't even want to call it combatives, but more of like a subject control type training, and it just wasn't complete. And so what we were able to do is find that massive void that was there, fill it with a lot more experience and a lot more direction, which now allows for a more complete curriculum, right? Post-immediate use of force,
correct,
use of force documentation, courtroom testimony. There's so much that goes into this, and so this is why it was started, was because Jay and I realized that there needed to be a change, and with my background doing what I do and Jay's background, and basically us coming together, combining forces, and now we're also trying to find like-minded individuals, but also people that may have more experience than us in certain areas, bringing them in as subject matter experts to now expand that realm, like post-immediate use of force stuff, things like that, right? So that's super important, and this is it's just the mission. That's it. I would say what sets us apart is probably the integration.
Yes, and the amount of professional experience as patrol officers along with tactical experience.
Agreed.
How do we take not just hobbyist black belt, but our cadre, the highest, like the majority of our cadre are all black belts that have had some sort of high level competition.
Right.
So how do we take all that skill and then fundamentally put it into a curriculum that integrates the environment, weapon systems, both on the police officer and the suspect, and use of force?
Right.
Like, those are our rules of the game. And that's what changes us, is we break down the why on all of that, and every module that we teach has concepts and principles, and we break down the why behind, hey, you're doing it this way, but this is the why we suggest to do it somewhere else.
Right.
So when we're teaching it that way, sometimes what I do is I'll do like a box drill demo or a scenario, and then watch the training wheels fall off.
Right.
And then bring everybody back in and be like, hey, we just saw what happened. This is what data is saying on that. This is what we know on that. This is how we're going to make it better, and that is why we're going to make it better.
Right. That's it. What he said. Confidence.
Confidence is actually one of the things we teach in Jiu-Jitsu and in tactics. Like, you have to have confidence. And the way you get confidence is through skills and experience.
Wild. And it's true confidence. It's not like this, you feel like you have to. We actually had Will, one of the guys who's in our instructor course in Charleston. He goes to the Folly course, and he's been a cop for almost 25 years. Mm-hmm. And he talks about, he always felt the need to be bigger and louder than the suspect because he felt like that's what he had to do. But really what it was, he said, he goes, I didn't have the skill or knowledge to just be confident in my ability to say, hey man, look, I don't want to go there, you don't want to go there, let's try to solve this. Truly de-escalating the situation. Right, so having that true confidence is a de-escalation tool.
Yeah, the more skilled you are, one, the less that you want to try to prove on the street with a suspect that probably hasn't showered, probably has mess sores, whatever the case may be. Like, I'm going to do everything I can to avoid getting into a hands-on confrontation with this person. Right? Like, I don't want to do it. I don't need to prove anything to anyone on the street. It's a professional job.
Right.
You know, you can't take things to heart in a professional job, as far as like, hey, they call you bald, or maybe if you're overweight and they call you fat. Like,
that's why he wears a hat, though.
Okay, you can't take those things personal. It's a job, right? Like, it's just not personal. But the skill set right there, will give you confidence. And the importance with the confidence and the skill set is you're more willing to de-escalate, or you have more options to de-escalate. We all know de-escalation is like the big narrative of what people want.
Right.
But de-escalation occurs all throughout all levels of use of force.
Correct.
Right? If I could have my gun up and I could be in a deadly physical force situation, that guy's got a knife, but if my tactics are good and I create distance well and I start de-escalating at distance, maybe I de-escalate that situation from being a shooting to us taking them into custody at cover and contact. Right. And those are the big things that people like have to understand. Is we offer the 40-hour instructor course. We're not going to make them tacticians or technical fighters in 40 hours.
No.
What we're doing is we're going to give them the groundwork of the principles, the concepts, the why. We're going to give them a skill building module that they can take with them to continuously build their skills. And then we're going to give them all the resources through the app that they need to continuing education to to be a better
Right.
practitioner, or be able to train continuously if their agency doesn't involve them in service, like a majority of departments don't. It's only the specialty units get that training.
Right, and this is also why, it's not just, and I think one misconception about what we do is you have to be an experienced grappler to come to a course. Right. That is not the case. I would say the majority of people who attend our courses are not experienced jiu-jitsu practitioners, and if they are, they're probably at that white belt or blue belt level, which we always encourage people to train jiu-jitsu.
Yes.
Right, or some type of grappling sport, right? We always encourage that, whether it's gi or no gi, wrestling, whatever the case may be. We always encourage that because, one, it's just going to give them more options and better pathways to even understand the curriculum better and apply it more effectively.
It is the fastest way to build a skill set, because
100%.
you can go 5 days a week, 6 days a week if you want to.
Right.
If you're just doing it in service, or you're just training on your own, you're not going to be building your skill set as fast. So we always push for some sort of jiu-jitsu, MMA training, wrestling training that allows you to build your skill set sooner. Now, not everyone wants to go to the gym and train in jiu-jitsu or train in wrestling. So the skill building modules, our video library, our virtual training allows them to train at home with their friend, significant other, co-worker, and still be able to build their skill set. Because we all know the most important thing is building that skill set. It's going to give them more options going forward.
Right, and I did see a comment the other day on Instagram I thought was pretty funny. A guy said, "You don't need any of this shit, just train jiu-jitsu." And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to counter that with, well, the goal of law enforcement isn't to submit, right? The goal is not to submit, right? There's, in addition, there's multiple other variables that need to be taken into consideration. We have no problem with people commenting on Instagram. Just understand that we may ask you to elaborate on something. And again, we want to have a beneficial conversation, because that's what's important, is having that conversation, educating. Again, if we don't know something, we're always students. We want to learn as well. But at the end of the day, right, like the goal is to have beneficial conversations to reach an end goal, right? Like we have a lot of experience on our side, and we love sharing that knowledge. Our instructors love sharing what they know and their experience as well. So again, I would say that confidence, that true confidence, is probably one of the top reasons why we do what we do, is instilling that confidence in an officer creates a more effective police officer.
Yeah, and I think that our teaching methodology, you got to think, is in order to teach someone, you have to know how adults learn.
That's true. Very true.
So we have an adult learning module for our instructors. We also understand that people learn the most when they realize they can relate it back to what they're doing with it.
Right.
So if we're teaching them just jiu-jitsu off their back, and the cop has never been on his back yet in his career, not to say he won't be, right. We have to be good there for when the time comes. But where do we spend the majority of our time? Taking subjects down and being on top, taking them into custody.
Correct.
If we can show them a better sequence of doing that individually and as a team, you're going to start to get buy-in, because now they're seeing how it relates to work. Okay, then you start creeping in those other modules of ground defense, and then all those modules coming together with adding in the integration of weapon systems. I
agree, 100%. I mean, I personally started training because I was trying to take an individual into custody. He had a child support warrant at 2 o'clock in the morning, and he didn't, when I was by myself, he didn't want to go. And he started pulling away, and my mind kind of went blank because this didn't work. And luckily I was able to de-escalate with my verbal skills. So I had good verbal skills, not so good hands-on subject control skills due to my academy training, which was PPCT. Yeah. And it didn't work. Shocker there. And so I started training jiu-jitsu and haven't stopped. And then I would say that there's a lot of examples in which the EFC curriculum has helped law enforcement officers. Specifically, I have a lot of friends that are still in the profession, and they have utilized the curriculum effectively multiple times. We've seen body cam footage, we've seen documentation of this, and the biggest takeaway they've all said is that it's repeatable. They're getting repeatable results with very similar techniques. Even if the situation is completely different, the subject control techniques and the routes that they take are all within the concepts and principles that we teach at EFC, and they're having a lot of success. And some of those are even weapons-based entanglements where the suspect had a weapon or was even going for a weapon, a takedown occurred, and they were able to control the situation, and then the situation ended successfully, right? Where no officers were hurt, and the suspect was also not hurt as well. And that's all due to high level of training and reps.
So, so I'm going to reference a couple scenarios where the incidents were involving weapon-based entanglements, because I could go on for probably 5 hours on all the DMs I get on the solo tactics, takedowns, team tactics, team takedowns, and vehicle extractions. The amount of DMs I get on a weekly basis of how successful the EFC curriculum is, and even from the New York guys that are running the EFC curriculum, just that have, before EFC came around, we were running it, that almost identical curriculum through the state. And I could go on for hours, okay? So let's talk about the weapons-based entanglements, which is gonna be your most dangerous one.
Right.
Okay? So first we'll start out with a department. There's a department up in Michigan that had a viral video go on. They had a OIS. They brought us in a couple months later to do one-man control, two-man team tactics, and then weapon-based entanglements. And ever since then, they've been sending people through our instructor course to the point where now they have somewhere between 26 and 28 level 1 instructors. And the last year and a half, they've been just collecting the data on how many times we've been using the EFC curriculum. But there's 4 or 5 specific situations that their captain has talked about that stood out where it has stopped. They have been in an entanglement fighting with a guy who had a weapon on him. The recognition of the flare that we talked about, how to control that, and then de-escalate it with control tactics, or de-escalate it with control and at gunpoint. Where none of those 3 to 4 weapon-based entanglement scenarios turned into shootings. One of those was both the passenger and the driver were fighting with them, and one of them had a weapon, and they were able to subdue them without any guns coming out. And they said it was because they were ahead of the game. They were playing chess while the bad guys were playing checkers, because they could see the flare, right, and how we pin it and work them as a vertical pin on the car, then taking down, giving it attention. So that's the first one. There's multiple with that agency. And it's a fairly decent-sized urban agency.
Right.
Then there's another guy. He's an instructor actually for a pretty well-known company, and he follows EFC curriculum. He hasn't had a chance to get to a course yet, but he actually follows our Instagram page and watches like all our breakdowns and all the videos that we post. Yep. He said the one thing he picks up again is on that human action of flaring the elbow. If I'm going to present, I make that 45. Him and his partner were chasing a guy that was like a robbery suspect, had a handgun on him. They didn't know at the time, but as they started to take him down, the guy started to get the gun out. They saw the flare, they pinned it, and he was still fighting with him. But because they pinned that arm and controlled him, they were able to get his hands behind his back without that gun coming out, which could have then been them behind the 8 ball,
right, or
obviously at least getting into an OIS creating distance. And that just came across recently. We posted it on our story in our feed not too long ago. And then we had another one where there was the guy was taking the subject down, and as he started taking him down, he saw the flare, and he immediately again stapled, double inside control. His backup then came, and they both pinned elbows and got his hands behind his back. And that guy had a knife and a large bag of dope. So he doesn't know if he was going for the dope or the knife, but right. Our weapons-based entanglements control, the awareness we talked about with the human action of presenting, what gives that away, how to control that vertical or on the ground, alone is just saving lives in the street, whether that's suspects' lives or officers' lives. Either way, it's still saving lives and making everybody in the scenario safer.
Right. Yeah, so a lot of what we do is for law enforcement. But obviously, we put a lot of information out there on a public platform so that we can also educate the public on what we do. We think it's important for them to also ask why. Why are you doing this? And again, that's how reform comes. That's how change is created. Is not just, we could be like, oh, you wouldn't understand, you weren't a cop. Sure, sometimes that is the case. But also it comes down to, but it's good to explain, right? Like, how do we create progress in society is educating, right? And obviously some people, we're not here to change people's minds. We're here just to provide a resource and education, and then they can use their critical thinking skills and deductive reasoning and or life experience to determine what's good and what's not, or what's acceptable and what's not. And then from there, but that's really a huge part of what we do, is putting out education, not just for law enforcement, but for the general public as well.
Yeah, so if you lack education and experience in certain lanes or in certain areas, say DT or combatives, right, you judge it on perception. And when we judge things on perception and we don't understand it, like we don't have any experience in it and we don't have any education in it, then it's kind of like a bucket of water with holes in it.
Right.
It's just going to flow through. You don't understand what's going
on.
I really learned that when I was testifying in the Daniel Prude grand jury case. Because the more I started getting questions from the jury, the more I treated it as like, I'm just going to educate these people because they don't know any better. Correct. And they didn't know any better. So like, I can't hold it against them for their perceived thoughts, because the media paints a picture of what they want to paint, and perception is perception. Okay? And that can be individual from each person's perception, right, and their experiences and what they train or what their education is. So I just went in there with the mindset of like, hey, I'm going to be no better than these people, and I'm just going to educate to them and give them some experience on what we're truly doing as far as tactics.
Right.
Head stability, for instance. They think we're just slamming people's heads off the concrete and, breaking everyone's skulls. That's what they thought. No, we're controlling the head, right? We stabilize the head. We don't slam it off the surface. We stabilize it. One, we stabilize it because the head is one of the major control points of the body.
Correct.
Two, we stabilize it so that they can't bite, spit, or bounce their own head off the ground and hurt themselves. Okay? So we can stabilize the head for multiple reasons. A third reason we stabilize the head is to proper arm extraction, we need to unwind the shoulder. If they can lift their head up, it automatically unwinds their shoulder. So again, there's counter pressure points, right? So we talk about how much pounds this human skull on average can hold, somewhere between 500 and 1,100 pounds of pressure, depending on how it's put in and if it's per square inch or overall. But one human being isn't cracking a human skull, right? It's so strong. So like educating people to that because they don't know. Now, we're talking about combatives. What is the perception of the public when they see the word combatives versus defensive tactics, or now what is like commonly used as control tactics?
Correct.
Okay. I'm not a fan of either of them. One, defensive tactics is, am I always defensive? No, sometimes I have to be offensive. So I don't like defensive tactics, okay? We can have defensive responses, but still be offensive.
Right.
Our responses can be defensive, okay? But we don't want to just say it's defensive tactics, because then it kind of is like giving us
a different picture.
The mindset of we're just being
right,
defensive the whole time. And that's not necessarily true. And use of force doesn't necessarily say we have to always be defensive.
Correct.
We can be offensive and use the most reasonable force necessary to end the situation. And sometimes that is even better. Because if we are too defensive, we don't use enough force right away, and then it escalates, and then it turns to be even a higher use of force than it got to because we were too defensive or
Correct.
passive. Okay. Control tactics. I'm not a big fan of control tactics either. We use control tactics in our curriculum. But control tactics are only a piece of the puzzle.
Right.
Right? When we talk about combatives is a full spectrum environment where you have a fight possibly, you have 2 or 3, 4 human beings in some sort of struggle. Okay? There's force being used.
Right.
There's violence being used. There's intent there. Okay? We don't know if the suspect has weapons, and we certainly know we're bringing a bunch of weapons to the fight. So my hands-on problem can become a gun problem right away.
And
My
vice versa.
gun problem may end up becoming a hands-on problem. So just to say it's defensive tactics or just control tactics, we talk about one of our main principles of EFC. One of the main principles is distance management. And in that principle, we have a double-edged sword. You can engage or disengage, and that is situation dictates, personal preference, skill level. Any of those things might play a factor into engaging or disengaging. What weapon of choice it is, all of those things, okay? So if we disengage, where is our control tactics? It's not control anymore. We're actually using distance, right? So we're using distance to create time so we can de-escalate, hopefully, or at least have better time for tactics and critical decision stress. There are times where we do use control, and that is when we can't establish distance. We need to control. That then gives us time, which allows us critical decisions under stress. So combatives is everything that it encompasses in a real-world fight, real-world environment, all unknowns, multiple possible weapon systems on both persons. That's why it's combatives. It is the truth of what the system is. It's the truth of the environment that we work in. And we just have to educate the departments. We have to educate the civilians of what combatives truly means.
Right.
Combatives isn't an aggressive, we're going to go out there and beat everybody up. We talk about de-escalation at all levels, from presence, verbal, all the way up to using deadly physical force.
Right. Yeah, again, and using that definition to then, through our content, through our resources, explaining this is why it's called combatives and not just DT or subject control or whatever the case may be, right? So again, it's just like you said, full spectrum. 2024, it's basically filled up, booking into 25 for level 1 courses. I would say that the future is to, again, elevate the standard of law enforcement combatives training.
So we set a goal to book 36 courses for 2024, which was our year 2. We are currently 4 courses from that being done, and that's going to happen. Those proposals are already out there, just kind of waiting on dates for some of them. Now I think the future is expanding the size of each course so that we can put more students in them. Some of the rooms that we have, like we have to cap it at 30, so expanding that. And then the future is having the agency programs become more of a thing. So we have a agency program. So if you have at least one defensive tactics instructor or combatives instructor for EFC, one certified instructor, your agency can become an EFC agency program, which allows all your sworn members to have access to our user app, our content, our material, our video library, virtual training. And I think that's truly where you're going to see law enforcement combatives grow.
I agree.
And that's what I'm excited for, because we have the ability with our back end to do that where the majority of other companies don't have the ability.
And we have the best back end.
So
it's true. Yeah, again, it's just full integration of what we do into the agency, giving the agency a resource to then implement better training for in-service, or even establish some type of in-service training that's consistent, that actually is a progression. It's not just like, hey, we're going to go learn this, and then the next in-service, you don't learn anything. There's no building blocks. And again, our goal is to now we are fully integrated in multiple agencies.
Correct.
Michigan State Police, Grand Rapids Police Department. There's you can find all those on the website. And one that we're trying to do is show them that, hey, we are here to help you build what you guys want to build, right? To get to where you want to be. That is what we do. And we're very good at that. And as we grow and as our knowledge grows, again, we're only going to get better. So with that said, not only do we do the agency stuff, we also have our Certified Academy program, which is rapidly expanding, where we basically find a jiu-jitsu school, a martial arts school, a legitimate martial arts school, and we integrate our curriculum into that school, so now they can also have a course specifically for cops, as opposed to just saying, hey, I'm a black belt or I'm a brown belt, let me just teach you jiu-jitsu, because obviously it needs to be integrated properly.
Yeah. Mike the Cop's doing the agency program in Michigan, and they're crushing it.
Right.
The enrollment in that class is going up. The Mat Factory They're teaching a free law enforcement class, and they're crushing it there. And actually, the free law enforcement class is building their memberships, because then cops are starting to understand how important it is and just becoming members of their gym.
Yeah.
Right. So that's kind of the model is, hey, get them in to where they're doing, again, adult learning is something job specific, grappling, but the fundamentals of job specific.
Right.
And then they realize how important it is. It's easy then to get them to wanting to train all aspects of the grappling game, right? Wrestling, jiu-jitsu off your back, jiu-jitsu on top. But again, it's how do we attack that? And the certified academies that we have are all excellent. They're all excellent people. We vet them. They're all law enforcement friendly.
Yes.
And that's growing. Anchorage, Alaska, Anchorage BJJ just became a certified academy.
Yes.
And they're a huge academy. They have a ton of people. So
good.
I know that's really helping the jiu-jitsu gyms. And again, the importance of the jiu-jitsu gym is a lot of agencies don't have the resources to do in-service training weekly or monthly or even quarterly. So partnering with a community gym allows your officers to go train on a weekly basis at the community gym. What that also does is it also gets the cops and the community involved together. It improves community relations.
Absolutely.
So anytime we can rely on the community to help train our officers more than the resources we can't provide, it's huge. And there's other ways too to get your department to pay those jiu-jitsu gyms to do the continuous training for you guys. Now, the importance of being the certified academy is you're going to be running an EFC curriculum as far as a police class, right? So it helps you integrate what we teach in regular BJJ for self-defense and sport into what we do in law enforcement. That's a big thing, right?
Correct.
I'm also super excited for launching a civilian course eventually. And I always tell cops this too. We shouldn't train just for our job. Because if we don't carry every single time we go to the house, and we're with our daughter, we're with our kids, we're with our wife, and someone tries to kidnap them, what is your skill set to be able to protect your family? Right? What is the skill set? The average, what is it? The average police response is 8 to 10 minutes. 8 to 10 minutes, yeah. Right? So you're the initial first backup of saving yourself, your family, and we know, like, people say, I just go red. That's a myth. That's 100% a myth. Like, you might go red, sure, and become very violent, but you still kind of suck at fighting, right?
You're going to suck more at fighting.
You're going to suck more at fighting. Yeah. So if we're sucking at fighting, like, it's not just being a professional and wanting being competent at your job. You don't got to be a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, Division I wrestler. No. You got to be competent in skills of controlling people. Yes. Okay, you got to be competent in tactics of creating distance and presenting. But you also need to utilize that in your personal life if you ever needed to protect your loved ones.
Yeah, that's one thing. That's a huge concept. Is we believe the Second Amendment. We want good citizens of this country to be prepared for whatever may fall into their lap. Right. So again, integrating weapons-based entanglements, concealed carry, post-immediate use of force, understanding certain environments. If you're at the mall. Everybody says, like, if you're at the mall with your family. I haven't been to a mall in years. But
let's just go
wherever. Walmart.
The last couple weeks,
Target,
the
wherever.
church shooting.
The church shooting.
Who was that taken out by? Right?
Yeah.
Civilian.
Yeah.
How about the officer that got stabbed in New Mexico?
City.
The officer got stabbed in New Mexico not too long ago. There was a civilian that took the suspect out and then used the cop's radio to call for help.
And then you look at the whole Kansas City thing that just happened. There were 2 civilians or 2 citizens.
They tackled the guy running away with a gun.
Yep, he had a rifle. Yeah, and so, again, it's that's the goal, is to be prepared for multitude of situations, right? Relying on those principles and concepts that we always talk about, working within those and fine-tuning those skills and techniques, and then, again, getting on the mat and pressure testing, getting on the mat and drilling these techniques and getting those reps, and it's super important. There's a lot of good feedback we get from each class, and one thing is hey, we get plenty of reps in, right? And now, again, for the sake of time, sometimes somebody might not be as skilled at something, and yes, you might need more time, but just like you said, after you take our 40-hour class, we don't expect you to be an expert tactician. We don't expect you to be to be able to control a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, right? But what we do expect you to do is now you have a solid foundation to now which you can build on and start to grow those skills to gain that true confidence that we just talked about.
Creating problem solvers, and then working to build your skill set as you understand the curriculum, right? Violence is always going to be here. It doesn't matter what rules you put in. It doesn't matter what gun laws you put in. Like, there's so many guns on the black market right now, it's not going to make a difference, okay? So people are going to get guns, and if they can't get guns, what did the Boston Marathon use? A crock pot and bullsh,
pressure cooker,
right? Like, so they're going to find ways to do violence. They're going to drive cars into someone. It's their intent. But what we need is we need good people trained in violence that are good people and only use it to take out bad people trying to do violence.
Crush evil.
EFC is blowing up. We have 30 some courses on the books already. Some of them are private, some of them are law enforcement only, some of them we can get approved civilians in. We want all of you guys to be able to train. We're going to be launching civilian courses in the future, but find us, come train with us. It could save your life, it could save the loved one's wife, or life. It could save
or wife.
Yeah, or a wife. It could save your wife if you choose to. So again, understanding that we are trying to put out the best content for you guys. We've built a team that has the highest level law enforcement experienced BJJ practitioners and wrestling practitioners that are law enforcement experienced on the street that have competed at the highest levels. Okay, I believe truly we have the best cadre by far. It's not close. And I also want to say our curriculum is second to none. Our curriculum is above and beyond. That's why the recognition of the name is going up, and it's only going to continue to go up. Find us. I would love to build relationships with you guys. That's the one thing that we really truly do is we don't just come and teach a course. We build relationships with everyone in that course. I won't memorize your guys' name, all of you, but I'll roll with you guys at lunch. I'll work hard with you. We'll meet up and maybe have dinner or snacks, but like we'll build relationships, and then we're going to keep those relationships as we move forward. Okay, I'm always available in email, text messages, whatever you guys need. So that's the one thing that I think you guys will really get out of coming to an EFC course, besides the top-notch cadre and the amazing content, is going to be just we're all about building relationships. And you guys can find us at...
Yeah, guys, check out efcombatives.com. We're trying to grow this YouTube channel, so please subscribe, leave a comment, like it, or don't, whatever you choose. And again, if you have any questions about what we do or who we are, feel free to email us at admin@efcombatives.com. We'll put all the links in the show notes below, so we'll put the website in there, the contact info. And again, 2024 schedule is almost booked up, but again, don't hesitate to reach out. We can always, for private courses and things like that, you can always send us an email. And again, we're already booking into 2025, so hope to see you out of class soon.